let's go ahead and change the third person character. Now I've added to the third person template the Infinity Blade Grasslands, Blade Warriors, and Weapons. And I also added the Anim starter pack, which we're going to use all those things for this demo. Let's go ahead and make this character into a different one. So what we want to do, this magnifying glass, anytime you find that, it's going to take you to where that object is inside of your game folder directory. So we're going to go to the mesh, find the skeleton. Let's open up the skeleton. We're going to do a retarget, and this is basically to set it up so that we can interchange animations. So let's do the humanoid rig, and now all of the bones have already been set up. Some assets that you bring from different parts of online aren't going to set up so easily. So we've set that up. We're going to look at the pose. Right here you can see that he's in the A pose. And what's important about that is if he wasn't in the same pose as whatever animations you're trying to retarget, you would want to make those line up. Let's save that pose, and then you're going to go to the mesh and save the mesh to make those bones set. So now I'm going to go to Infinity Blade Warriors and go to that skeleton and do the same thing. The humanoid rig, and then once all these bones are set up, he is also set up in the A pose. So everything should work there. Save, and then save the mesh to apply those changes. Okay, now what's important here is let's go back to the third person character, and let's go to the animation blueprint. Find it. What we're going to do is duplicate and retarget to the Infinity Blade characters. And now what's important is to change the name because it's named the same thing and it's going to be hard to find when you go to assign it. So let's rename. We'll call this Blade NMVP. I'm going to do this as well. The Anim starter pack. Go into, this should have its own skeleton separate. Right here. Do the same thing, which is a retarget. Okay. Close that out. Save this to apply the changes. You have to save the mesh. You'd think the skeleton would be what you needed to save, but the mesh is actually what you have to save to make those changes stay. We're also going to go into the Anim starter pack, and I want to get the blend space jog just so that I have diagonal backwards animations. So we're going to retarget, and we're going to make that to the Infinity Blade skeleton. Okay. I'm going to change the name once again to blend space blade, just so I can identify it later. Alright, so let's go into the third person character and let's change the skeletal mesh. Let's use the forge character. Okay. Now you want to change the Anim blueprint to the one we just retargeted. We're going to call that the Blade Anim blueprint. And now when you play, you are now the Infinity Blade character. You can do that with any one of those skeletal meshes. They're all assigned to the same skeleton. So you could change those out. Just depending on what you wanted to do. Oh, that's it has to be a character though, so go back to Forge. We lost our blueprint. Okay, just gonna do a save all. Alright, let's set up some inputs here. So, just show you something. Right click in the blueprint to give all your possibilities here. You can type in what you would like to use, any button on the keyboard or mouse. So you can do it this way, but there's a kind of a deeper and better way to do this, and that's to go to your project settings and go to input, and we're going to add an action. Call this one attack, and we're going to use left mouse button. Now that's set up, you can just close this out. And now when you do this, you can just hit or type in attack, and now you're getting the same thing as the left mouse button, but this is just a better way to run it through the engine and everything, so we don't need that. Let's create a new variable. We'll call this one attack, and we'll call it's a bool. We're going to set attack to true. Okay. Now let's go to our anim blueprint. Now in here we're going to need to get the anim graph. Okay. So this is your event graph. This is everything that's telling the animations how to run. Whether or not you're doing jumping is using this. Your speed for how fast the legs move versus how fast the character's moving, that kind of thing. So right here, I'm going to do a cast, which is just a way to get very specific so that you can get variables. And we're just going to run this right into here. Run this right into here. And we'll get our attack. And then let's duplicate this. Okay, and now this is variable list for in the anim blueprint, which is separate than your character blueprint. Now when we plug this in, if attack is true in our blueprint, it's going to set the attack true in the anim blueprint, and if it's false, it's just going to keep that going the whole time. We'll go into our anim graph. This is all of our jump stuff. It's already been set up with the template. I'm going to get it out of my way real quick. I'm going to create a new state. Call it attack. Oh, I already had one of those. From here to here. Okay, and we'll set if attack is true, it's going to go to our attack state, and then right here, if attack is false or not true, we'll go back to idle, walking around, that kind of thing. Okay, I'm going to need an attack animation though, so let's do the jump start. Let's duplicate it. We'll call this attack. We'll go in here and make some changes here. I'm just going to do this just to give you an example of how to make changes and that kind of thing, but you would really want a better animation to start with. Actually, we're going to slow this down. So now it's half as fast. Okay. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's grab it to here, and then we'll add a keyframe and apply it. We'll go to the very end of the animation and see where he's at. Keyframe and apply. And the goal here is just to get the arm to kind of swing a little bit. Okay, there we go. So now we kind of have a swinging motion there. Let's go back to our third person character real quick. We're going to add a component, a skeletal mesh. We'll call this a weapon. Now once again, this is the construction script, so what happens here will happen before the game is even started. We'll make the parent the mesh. And we're going to just go ahead and do the socket while we're here. Even though I haven't made the socket yet, we'll call it weapon. We'll keep world. No, we'll do snap to target, and then this one is keep world. There's a couple different ways you can do it with a parent-child relationship in the component list, but I'm just going to do it with a socket because that's the best way to do it as far as I've seen. Let's go to the right hand. We're going to add a socket. We're going to call it weapon. And let's add preview asset. We'll make this one sword. We got I like the dragon. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll do the dragon sword. Now what you're going to do is get it in place how you want it to be on your character when it's in the blueprint. I'm going to do that here. Now another thing that's useful is right here you've got these orange. These are snap to grid. If I turn this off, it's going to allow me to rotate decimal points instead of whole numbers. And I don't really use it that often, but it is good for fine tuning. Let's bring this over. Alright, that works. I'm not trying to get too specific with it. So now when we go to our character, our viewport, we're going to want to select the weapon in the details. We're going to look for the dragon. Okay, so now it's not connected to the character at all. It's just kind of in the blueprint. When we hit compile though, the construction script should fire. And now it's attached to the hand. Let's go, there we go. Animation blueprint is good. I think the reason that it's messing up is because I don't have the attack animation set yet. So right here, like this, and we'll do the attack animation. Okay. Alright, let's go into here. Make sure attack is set to off by default, and we'll only set it on when we click. So here we are, we've got the sword attached to our character. We hit attack, and now he's throwing the animation. Now we're going to solve what's wrong with that real quick. In here, instead of running, let's do a layered blend per bone. And this is just how you can customize animations to use the top half, the bottom half of the body, or just one arm, or just the head, that kind of thing. The base pose will be our legs. So you'll click on this, go to the details. You're going to add which bone your layered blend is going to take place on. So I believe it's spine. Okay, and then the base pose will be that that blend space we made earlier, so that no matter which direction you're traveling, need to set up direction real quick. Okay. Okay. And we'll just need to get actor rotation. And now when I attack, it shouldn't matter which way I'm going, the legs should look more appropriate than they would if we were just using the 2D blend space. Okay. What we need to do is okay, let's go in here and let's just go ahead and make a notify real quick. Right here at the end. What this is neat because you can fire events from the blueprint that will trigger things in your character's blueprint. Let's make a new one and we'll call it end attack. And now we'll go in here and we'll get the event and of notify end attack. Now this is actually going to control what's happening in our third person blueprint. So we're going to set attack to false. And now the animation should play only once and then return back to normal. Okay. The animation looks terrible, but like I said, that's just a rough thing just to get a placeholder going. Let's go into here and let's try a different bone. Instead of one, we're going to try the third spine bone. See if that gives us any better of a result. Not a whole lot better. So let's try this for now. Instead of using that, we will use the 2D blend space. We'll get back to that in a minute. Okay, that works for now. So now we've set up the character with an attack animation that can be controlled with left click. Let's do some damage. Let me just save all real quick. So another thing, we want to click on this and make sure that it has no collision, because it'll knock into static objects and that kind of thing and mess with things. So yeah, right here you're going to set it to custom and click this and it'll just be all collision off. Just make sure everything's off. And now it won't bump into objects. So let's add a new component. Well, there's better ways to do this, but I'm just going to do this to keep it quick. We're going to call this the damage box. I don't want that to be a child of the weapon, not currently. Let's go up here and set the rotation back to 0. Move it over So let's create a custom event. And these are nice because you can choose when code starts. We're going to call this the damage event. And we're going to get, actually let's do it this way. So what it's going to do is get any actors that the box is overlapping when this damage event fires. We'll just go ahead and make it pawn. And let's apply damage. And we'll make the damage 5. Damaged actor. Okay. Let's get that to fire from our anim blueprint once again. So we'll go in here, event graph, and then we'll do, let's actually do the anim notify. So right about here, we'll add a new notify. We'll call this damage event. And now at that point in the animation, that's when the damage event will fire. So right here, damage event from our animation will trigger the damage event in our blueprint. I think I need that. I don't need that. Just saving. Okay. Let's go ahead and create a life variable. We'll compile so that we can set the default value. So let's make that 9, so we know 2 hits will cause death. So let's do event any. Okay, so these are kind of written into the editor. And I believe they're multiplayer ready. I'm not going to really get into multiplayer stuff. That's much deeper. We're just going to stick with single player. But should a damage event occur on this blueprint, this will fire. And let's take that damage and subtract it from our life. Okay. And then we'll set life with that new number. Actually, we're going to do this the other way. And then let's create a variable called death. And if life is less than or equal to 0, we will set death to true. No, actually we're going to do this a little differently. Do a branch and then set death to true that way. Kind of more of a hard set this way. Okay. Let's go to our mesh in the blueprint here. Or in the content browser, I should say. So let's create a physics asset.